So Resolve 17 has finally been released. My name's Darren Mostyn and I've been using Resolve since version 7 and I haven't seen such a huge update like this in all the years I've been using Resolve. The software development team have really listened to what people want and they've implemented some amazing new tools. And it's going to take me a little while to show you all the new features because there's so many of them that I'm going to split this over a few episodes. And in this episode I want to show you some of my favourite things in the colour page. So let's go and have a look. So here we go, this is my top 7 highlights in the brand new version 17 of Resolve and I'm focusing on the colour page. This is shot on Arri Alexa. This is a music promo I graded a few months ago and I basically baked in the grade that I did because the node tree can be quite confusing to some people if they're beginners, and also just for speed and getting around the interface to show you the new features as quickly as possible. So 7 highlights. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you quickly some of the key things that have happened. So the primary color grading area here, you'll now see that the interface has changed slightly, so it looks much smoother and they feel a little bit more accurate to use actually. And also I've noticed that the color boost and highlights and temperature tint are all on one page now. This used to be on 2 pages. So this is a real nice addition. This primary area looks really nice and clean now. And in addition to that, there are now dedicated high dynamic range tools to work with. So we've actually got a whole series of these and I'm going to look at that in this episode. And moving on to the curves tool, you can now pop it out into a larger form. So it allows you to do much more detailed work in the curves because you've got a larger area to play with. And also there's a brand new curve in here called saturation versus luminance. And so just to give you a sneak peek of what's coming up in this episode, we've got this new tool called the Color Warper, and we've also got down here an amazing tool called the Magic Mask. And there are also some brand new open effects up here, so I've just put these into favorites, but you've got false color, for example. Noise reduction is now available as a NoFX plugin, so that allows you to work with it in the edit page. We've got motion trails, video collage, there's all sorts of new stuff in there. So in no particular order, here's my first highlight and it's the Color Warper. Now this is an amazing new feature. What I can do with this is basically make really quick color adjustments that are really clean. So for example, I want to change the sky up here. If I just grab it, you can see as I move towards the outside, the saturation gets stronger, and pull it back and the saturation gets less, but it's really clean because it's grabbing all this area around it. So you're getting a really good looking grade. I've done a dedicated tutorial on this because I go into it in quite some detail, so I'm just going to sort of give you the real highlights of what this tool does in this episode, but check out my other episode that is dedicated just to the Color Warper. So that's the sky done. If we go onto the grass, you'll see I can do exactly the same thing. It's just really clean, really rich, and I can even change the hue of it. So as you go around this, you can see the hue here. So the changes I'm making here at the minute are quite broad because we've got 6 of these points sticking out, and we can change the number of that by clicking down here and we can add extra points. So there we go, now we've got 16 in here. So our area that we're moving, that we're changing or grading, is much finer. So now if I click on here, it's a more concentrated area. The scope is not quite so broad, and also you can pin points. So we can actually put on here, we can actually click here and lock points down so they're not affected when we make the move. So you can really start to isolate the areas really cleanly. So if you want to see the Color Warper in more detail, check out my dedicated episode. So highlight number 2 is the Magic Mask. So if we go down here, there's a shot here where she's running through the park and then she waves, and what I want to do is isolate this. So traditionally I would have to take a window here, and let me just zoom out a little bit, and we're going to draw a shape around her. And then what we do is track that. So I'm going to go to my tracker and track forwards. And not a chance. That's far too complicated to be that precise using the tracker. You'd have to hand do that each frame using sort of rotoscope techniques. So how can we fix that? Well, let's undo that. Let's get rid of that by resetting. And come back here. And what I'm going to do is go onto the Magic Mask. And this makes this really simple, okay? All we have to do is add stroke. So I'm on the add stroke at the moment, okay? And you're just identifying what you want to mask. So I'm going to put the highlight on so that you'll see this update live. And I'm just going to put a small stroke on her face. Now, this is using the neural engine, so it's quite slow to react, and I'm also on a 2013 Mac here. But you can see already that has identified it as a person, because I'm in the person mode. Features here lets you choose particular things, so face, hair, legs, whatever you want. So because I'm on person, it's identified that this is a person, and it's already drawn the shape around this figure for me. And you can draw as many strokes as you want. So you can add another one if you want. And you can also use this minus button, so if you want to get rid of small details that are coming through. It's done such a good job, there's not actually anything needs to get rid of. But there you see I'm making that even more accurate now. And I'm just going to process that, so just press forwards. Okay, that is quite incredible how accurate that was, and that was in faster mode, so it's not even in the best quality. If I switch over to better, have a look at the mask shape change now. It gets even more accurate. So there you go, so that's the magic mask. Now, I do warn you, it's not the fastest thing on the planet. You need some serious GPU to get this going properly, but it is really fantastic. And of course, I've got things down here. I can do denoise and change the blur radius and that sort of thing. So highlight number 3 doesn't quite have the wow factor of that, but it is an incredibly useful addition to this version. So what I'm going to do is have a look at these stills that I've got here. So these are just some grabs from the program. What I want to do is just check that we are in balance and that the grade is looking consistent throughout. So this is things that we do all the time. So I'm just going to go on to this shot here. And what I want to do is just compare how the rest of the program is looking on this shot. Let me find a sharper shot of that, somewhere around there. And to do that, we use the split screen mode. So go up here, split screen. And what I'm going to do is select these stills. So I'll just shift select, go to my split screen mode, and I'm going to select in here selected still images, and there is the shot that I'm on, and there is the 3 stills, so I can compare them. Now the problem I've got is these are the wrong parts of the shot, so generally it grabs the first still of the image. And to correct this, I'm going to use a new feature which allows me to use playheads to do my split screen. So I'm going to leave that playhead there. I'm going to go up to color. I'm going to say active playhead. And this is not a new feature. This has been in Resolve for years. I'm going to say playhead B. And I'm going to put playhead B on a different shot. So let's go to our shot number 1 over here. And I'm going to change this to be playheads, which is a new feature. So this now allows me to analyze and compare playheads. So let's add another playhead. If I go into here and say color, active playhead, and playhead C, that will leave A in place, that will leave B in place, and give me a new playhead, which is C. So this is the shot that we had the original thumbnail of. It's just her shoe. But if we move further down the shot, you'll see we've actually got her face in there. So we can actually use this as a much better comparison now. And let's add one more playhead. So we say active playhead, playhead D, and I'm going to move a little bit down the timeline. Let's have a look down here, maybe this shot here. And if I move through that shot, there you go, you see we've got a much better view. So now we've got shots that we want. And I can still adjust this one as well, so I can go back to B and make a change on there. And then click on here and just tweak that. So we're actually looking at the frames we want to analyze. This makes life very easy when you're matching the grade. And we can see here her hair's looking good through all of it. The sweatshirt's looking the right shade. So I'm really pleased with that. So it's looking like my grade is pretty balanced. Now what I often do is bring up 2 shots in here and compare them using the scopes. And because I've got 4 in there, we're not seeing an accurate representation on scopes because these shots are technically being represented on top of each other. So what you can do is deactivate the playheads by going in here and say reset. And then we'll stay on that one. Let's go to our playhead and say B, and then go to the shot that we want. So let's go to shot 17 that we were on earlier. And now we've got a good side-by-side analysis in our scope. So we can see this shot on the left and this shot on the right. So being able to use playheads in the split view is a really useful feature for matching grades. So highlight number 4 is for the more advanced colorists. So I'm going to go into here and I will do a dedicated tutorial on this because I'm going to lose people otherwise. So if you understand what I'm doing here, then you'll already appreciate how useful this is going to be. But the DaVinci YRGB Color Manage section has been completely rewritten and above all simplified. So the categories are much easier to get your head around now. And there is a new DaVinci Wide Gamut option in here as well. But I'm going to do a dedicated tutorial on this. So Those who know what I'm talking about already will be very excited, and for those who don't, then I'll teach you in another tutorial. And just to say, if you are new to Resolve or you're at beginner level, you do not need to go here, so don't worry that you've missed something. Okay, so number 5 is reference wipes. So let's go back over here, and if I double click this one, as you know, it would open up our image wipe, so it's to compare two shots, and that's by default as a split screen. And as you know, in the past we've been able to do this, but there are now some new options. So there's now a new diagonal view, and there's also this Venetian blind view and this checkerboard view. So these are really cool. So it's another good way of comparing shots and just giving you some new extra tools to get your grading balance really good. So highlight number 6 is the fast review function. So if I just go to the beginning of my timeline, and what I want to do is preview the footage, but I want it to go faster than real time. And what this does is intelligently look at each clip's duration and plays back either faster or slower. So clips that are quite short will play at pretty much real time, but this clip here, which is quite long, plays at faster than real time. So it allows me to get through my footage that much quicker. So if you're enjoying this content so far, hit the subscription button and drop me a comment, and have a look at my other episodes. Even though they're version 16, there's some very relevant information in there, and let's get on with the rest of this episode. So highlight number 7 is the high dynamic range tools. So we've only had up to now standard dynamic range tools, which are here, but we've now a whole new tool set just to enable us to work in high dynamic range. And high dynamic range allows us to work at much brighter levels than we've been used to. It's quite a specialist area, so if you don't understand it, don't worry too much. I'm going to do another tutorial on this, but let's just have a look at these tools. So we've got here a range of tools. There's only 4 showing here, but there's actually 7 tools available to us. So they go up in incremental values, going from the lowest, which is the blacks, dark shadows, and moving up into lights, highlights, and specular highlights. So how can we work out what's going on here? This is a global one, by the way, as well. So because there isn't room to put 7 wheels in here, you're working on this principle where you basically go across in rows, and you can set up your own rows and customize them as well. But we also need to look at this tool, which is working out the zones. So what is the difference between a black and a dark? What's the difference between shadow and lights? And you can actually control where the fall off is on these. So the zones, these are zones. So you control where it is. And we can expand this by clicking here so we see both the controls and the zones. Okay, so this red area is the fall off of each particular zone. To tell what each particular zone is doing, let me get on a better shot. I'm going to come down here. Let's get on here. If I click on this highlight here, I can see what's being controlled by that particular function. Okay, if we go to our shadows and click here, you see exactly what's being controlled. And I can adjust the range here or here. So you see as I move these sidebars here, I'm controlling the fall off here, and I'm controlling the point that this control is working at. The nice thing with the HDR tools is that A, they do work in SDR, but secondly, we've got saturation control in each individual element. So the theory behind these is that as you increase the luminance, you're not increasing saturation at the same time, so you get a much better control. Let me show you. So in here, if I go to light, click on here, if I just go to exposure, lift up, lift down, and we control our saturation individually on here. So you can see that adjusting, but it's really subtle. So what we need to do is play with the point that it's working at and the fall off. I will do a dedicated video on that, so we can go into that in much more detail, but I think you'll agree version 17 is an amazing update, and the developers have done an amazing job on giving us some fantastic new tools. Check out my episode on the edit page and the cut page as well, and I'll see you in the next episode.